Apart from literally putting every single thing that I had to do in my calendar, which I've talked about in my productivity episodes, something that really helped me was the mindset of when you're juggling many balls, something will fall. You just need to decide whether it's a plastic ball or a glass ball that is about to fall. Hi, it's episode 93, and I'm going to talk about balancing multiple responsibilities, aka juggling many balls, doing many things, whatever you want to call it. So, this has been my life since pretty much I was in uni. I was in school, I was working full time a lot of the time. I had multiple jobs, I was volunteering, I had many projects that I was working on, and I had a pretty great social life, and my academics did not suffer. And people often ask me, like, how did you do this? How were you able to do that? And for me, one of the main things, besides putting literally every single thing that I had to do in my calendar, was understanding that some of the balls I was juggling, some of them were plastic and some of them were glass. And I had to be careful about not letting the glass balls drop. And what was a glass ball could change from time to time. So if I had exams coming up or had a deadline coming up, the realm of school would be a glass ball at that particular time. But if I didn't have exams or school were on holiday, or I was up to date with my assignments and there were no tests or exams coming up, then the school ball would be a plastic ball in that moment. So it's not constant all the time. The kind of ball that you're juggling will change depending on the current context and the other things that you have on your plate at the time. Basically, this is about prioritizing, and prioritizing based on what is most important at the moment that you need to get done. So there were times where I had work stuff to do, work deadlines, and then I also had school deadlines, and then the NGO that I was volunteering with, we also had things that we need to complete and campaigns that we were running. And then I also had to maintain my relationships with my friends, hang out with them, go out with them, those kinds of things. Those were like the main broad areas of my responsibilities. And then of course I had to like visit my family because I wasn't living at home, I was living in school, which was not like in a different city from where my family was, but I still had to go home on some weekends to visit my family. And I also had to like take care of myself and rest and all of these things. And so even now, I have my work, I have my social life, I'm doing online courses, I'm recording this daily podcast, and so many other things. An example is on Sunday, I believe. Sunday's episode, I think that was episode 90, was literally recorded 30 minutes to midnight. And I had gauged my day. I had a full day in church. I was serving in church that day, and it was the Easter service. So, it was very long. And then I went to my friend's house and we had dinner with a couple of people and we played games. So I was able to stay in her house till like 11, past 11, because her house is really close to my house. Like I can walk from there to my house in like 15 minutes. So I was like, I can take that risk and stay there longer to connect more and just engage more with my friends and not worry about having to get home. If I was in a friend's house who was living farther away, I would have left earlier, which is also what happened on Saturday. I went to my friend's house because it was she was doing her birthday party, and I had to leave by I left by 10 or 10:30, I think, because it was a longer journey home, and I knew that I needed to record podcast still. So that is literally the balls that you're juggling. Showing up for my friend's birthday was very important in that relationship, but also I needed to get home to record podcast. People weren't leaving at the time. She was like, "Oh, don't go. There's still time." I was like, "Oh no, I have to record my podcast because there's really not still time." If I didn't have the podcast to record, then I would have stayed longer. And that is like a very recent small example of balancing balls and juggling priorities. At the same time, I had work to do, some application deadlines to meet for some things that I'm applying for. But the deadline, there was still some days away from, like I still have a couple of days from today to submit those applications. And so I was like, yeah, I can move these to later in the week and be present for my friend and still have time to record my podcast. So, if you're someone who has multiple things that you're trying to balance at the same time, know that something will drop. Like, it's impossible for you to perfectly have all the balls balanced perfectly all the time, especially when you're not able to get a lot of help externally. So that could be like having someone coming to clean your house every week, or so that's something that you don't have to worry about balancing, or something like sometimes the system will break. Maybe your cleaning person is sick and they can't come, or your nanny is not available this week, or something will happen, or a deadline at work gets shifted closer suddenly, or you suddenly have a test that you didn't know was going to happen. Something will always come up, and inevitably something will fall. How you manage that is you decide what is important to fix right now, what is important to focus on right now, what is important to do right now. And if you also think about, especially with relationships, think about what you've banked, like the things that you've banked already, that you can say that, oh, okay, I've deposited in this relationship enough that if I disappear for like a week or two, or even a month, and I don't mean literally vanish without talking to your friend for like a whole month, but if I'm not as present or as engaged, in the past, all the my deposits still speak for me, and it's not like I'm ruining this relationship or abandoning my friends, and also making it clear to your friends that, oh, this is happening, so I won't be able to be present for this. Like, I didn't just leave my friend's party just like that. I'm like, bye, I'm going. I was like, oh, I have to go record my podcast. So yeah, balancing requires keeping everybody involved and prioritizing what needs to be done urgently and most importantly at that moment, and letting go of the other things if you can. And then when you can, pick them up again. Bye. Here's your regular reminder that I am accepting questions for the podcast. So please submit a question through the link in the description or the show notes, and I will answer in a future episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of A Couple of Things with Lade Tawag. If you enjoyed any part of this episode or found any part of it useful or insightful, please leave a comment if you can on your podcast listening app. Like, subscribe, all the nice things, and of course share with someone, anyone at all. Thank you. Bye.